Good morning, dear friends. How nice of you to come on the first morning of Snowpocalypse 2.0. There's still hope it may come tonight. So we're going to start this evening. I almost said this morning in quite a different way. On Saturday, March the 16th evening, Carol Grubman's going to be performing her monologue on childbirth called Force of Nature. And she's been doing this in a variety of places around the country, and she has offered to do it here as a benefit for PIMC. And she's going to come up and offer a short story this morning. But I want to say a little bit about her. Carol Grubman, mother, grandmother, actress, storyteller, and retired postpartum doula. Graduated cum laude with a BFA in acting from Cornish College of Arts in 1998. Previously a single mom, she worked as an artist in education, conducted creative workshops for adults, and performed as a storyteller and singer throughout the Northwest. She also produced and hosted a children's radio program in Lincoln County, Oregon. She received doula training and certification from the Seattle Midwifery School and began her business caregiving postpartum doula service. Inspired and sometimes dismayed by her clients' birthing stories, she began the 5-year process of creating Force of Nature. And this is a description of Force of Nature. A 1-hour theatrical work is a compelling educational program that brings to light the social, political, and cultural issues of childbirth. An experienced workshop leader, Carol's performance includes pre-show handouts and a provocative post-show audience dialogue. The Force of Nature package can be tailored to fit any venue. So in talking with Carol about preparing for this, one of the things we thought would be important was to say, why have a presentation on childbirth in a Buddhist center? Well, birth, sickness, old age, decay, death, very central. And in talking with Carol, I remembered that way back in, a long time ago, R.D. Laing, some of you may remember him, he was a remarkable revolutionary psychiatrist. He went and did 6 months of meditation, this kind of meditation in Sri Lanka. And then he came back to the West. And I was in Toronto at the time, and he, in the largest venue in Toronto, people are wondering, what is R.D. Laing going to talk about, having done 6 months of meditation? And he did a profound, in-depth slideshow, poetry, and description of conception and birth. That's where he came to, and it was really stunning. So we're being born and we're dying every moment. And actually, speaking of born, my second grandson is entering the world on Wednesday morning via C-section. So that's an event coming up soon. So that's lots from me. Carol, would you please come and I'll adjust your sound a little bit as needed. I might be fine. Push it once and it should go green. You green? Good.
Hey, 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 hey. I am the keeper of the stories. I will think in the backward way and tell you of a time that happened many moons ago. Kuake leno leno mawate, hayano, hayano, hayano. Ah, yes. It was a season of the year when I would go to the nearby desert to search for bones. And I found the bones of Lobos, a Mexican wolf. Oh, I was very excited. Mexican wolves in the very old days were seen in the high mountains, later in the grasslands. With the cattle ranchers' empire in the late 1800s, early 1900s, few wolves, if any, survived the government slaughter. And so I had found the skull of the wolf, and all of the teeth, including the canines, were unharmed. And I had found the spine, every small round parcel of it. And I had found the teeniest, tiniest piece of cartilage that went in the end of the tail of the wolf. And I had found the femurs and all of the claws. And I began to lay the bones out on the sand floor in the cave where I would sleep at night. And after I had them all laid out, I saw that just one bone was missing. It was one piece of one of the feet. I searched for days, sifting and sifting and sifting through the sand, but I just couldn't find that one last bone. For weeks and months, I brushed the sand back and forth, sifting it through my fingers. Finally, I found it. I found that bone. How beautiful it was. How beautifully carved. I put it in my medicine bag, and I could hardly wait to get back to my cave to prepare a sacred ceremony for laying that last bone in place. That night, I built a fire in the cave. I sat before the fire, and my body threw a shadow across the cave wall. And I sang, "Earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, fire my spirit." I knelt before the skeleton and laid that one last bone in place. Suddenly, the skeleton began to flesh out. It became round and plump. It was furry. It had guard hairs on it. It had a smelt that was black on the end of its nose. And just as the sun began to rise, the wolf leapt to its feet, ran out of the cave, and transformed into a woman who went running through the desert laughing, with her hair gray, yellow, and black streaming behind her. Ahoo!
No broadcast to the internet yet. I just got a text.
Yes, I checked it, it's working.
It is? Oh, good. Okay, well. Oh, the sacred drum. Thank you. Test 1, 2. That's too loud now. One, two, three, four. Sound okay? Yeah. Thank you, Carol. I'm so glad you were persistent finding that last little piece. So, here we are. Hello to those of you joining us, I hope, out in internet land. Anybody here for the first time today, please raise your hand. Oh, several. Well, welcome. Welcome. I hope this morning turns out to be really of great value to you and importance. So we begin in our traditional fashion, a tradition of 2,600 years actually, of reminding ourselves of refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Refuge in being awake, the reality of this, right now, this that's conscious. We take it for granted like the fish that swim in the water. You know, if you ask a fish, what about water? They say, water? What do you mean water? It's silly. Well, what about consciousness? When you woke up this morning, something pretty phenomenal happened. You went from being not here to being suddenly here. The Dharma, what one discovers with awareness, is the fact that everything changes. The fact that when we really look deeply, the self is a process. And the Sangha. Take a moment to look around at your colleagues here and others of us in human form. This is our little local community, and we have a greater community, which is the community of all life. And then the specific community of those who've done this practice and who have realized the true nature of human beings. So I invite you to join me to the degree you want in these, for me, very comforting phrases. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the way of understanding. That's not right. From the top of Sangha, I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. I even know where that wandering mind wandered to. This exquisite instrument was offered in a raffle at the recent, about 3 weeks ago, Winter Folk concert. Winter Folk has been happening for 23 years, and it supports an organization, helps to support an organization called Join. And Join got 1,004 people off the streets of Portland into housing last year. And this was made by a fellow in Vancouver, Washington. And it was up for raffle, and I won. Isn't that something? It's a gorgeous piece of musical instrument. But that's where my mind wandered then when I got lost. So, the fellow who made this guitar, and I spoke after the drawing, and he's coming in for a couple of meditation sessions to take his practice deeper. So here we sit. Let's do the same old thing. Stop. Sit down. Pay attention to the life that's here. This precious, one-of-a-kind ever on the planet life. There's a body, and there's awareness. And so we can do something very, very simple with this awareness, which is to bring it home into the experience of breathing in and breathing out. And this really remarkably simple training, being aware of the beginning of the breath, the middle of the breath, the end of the breath, as sensations in the chest and abdomen. Is really the foundation for a curiosity, which is the question, who am I? Who am I And how shall I live? So we begin really simply with the experience in the present moment of breathing in and breathing out. And most probably you noticed that the mind doesn't easily stay on the simple sensations of breathing in and breathing out. The mind is deeply conditioned. It has its own agendas. And mostly we human beings are unaware of the mind's agendas, of our conditioning, and we think that's who we are. We believe the thoughts. It's as though we're hypnotized by our thoughts. We believe the emotions. And this teaching is so simple, which is simply wake up. Notice the thoughts for what they really are. Notice the body sensations for what they really are. Notice the emotions as they really are. And so we use this mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing as a strategy for cultivating that aspect of mind, that aspect in consciousness which can observe, which can disidentify. So each breath comes into being out of nowhere. It doesn't exist and then it does. It then rises to fullness, changes direction, declines, and then disappears. particularly for people who are new to this practice. The first great insight, and it's of huge importance, is just how much the mind wanders, how out of control it is. Only by coming to realize the madness of that which you take to be your mind can you begin to do the work necessary. Many people actually quit meditation because they have the notion, I can't control my mind. What we can have is influence, and we certainly can learn to not identify with the thoughts and feelings, plans, memories of the mind. Each breath really does have a beginning. It comes out of nowhere. It's like that first breath of the infant. The mother can no longer breathe for us, and carbon dioxide builds up, and there's this gasp. The very same mechanism is happening with every breath now. not only are we attentive to the actual experience of breathing in and breathing out, but we practice with a curiosity. What else is happening? Since these wandering minds are so prevalent, what about them? Some of them are likely thoughts and feelings of desire, of wanting something. This is boring. I want something else. I want. Or maybe thoughts and emotions rooted in aversion, disliking. I don't like this. I don't like these thoughts. I don't like sitting here. I don't like this talking. Or maybe the mind is all restless, and jumpy, anxious, judgmental. Or maybe it's sleepy and dull and uninterested. Or perhaps it's doubting, disliking, wondering, why am I here, or does this work? Can I do this? Or maybe there's some emotion afoot. Happy, sad, lonely, feeling profoundly connected. Really seeing what's happening, being curious about it. And there is, of course, much more to the body than breathing. There's the temperature. Regions of the body that are warm or cool. The pressure of the body against the cushion or the chair. The extraordinary amount of life in the hands. There could be regions of pleasure and regions of pain. always, there's the breath to come home to. As long as you're alive and conscious, come home to this sensation-filled torso that breathes in and breathes out. As we come to the end of our time sitting together, please allow the mind to become even more intimate with the sensations of breathing, perhaps more than you ever have allowed. Notice that there's sometimes a pause between breaths, and then it simply doesn't exist. There is no breathing. The heart continues to beat, countless other functions continue, but respiration stops. And then, with no effort of will, It just starts. It rises to fullness, and then it declines, and then it just vanishes. And please notice now the transition from mindfulness of breathing to taking a moment to notice your body where it touches the chair, the life in your hands, the life in your face, eyes, and then the intention to open the eyes. And notice they don't just zip open. It does take an effort of will. It takes an effort of intention. And if you feel the body feels like it wants to stretch a little bit, give it the permission to do that. But for this instant, really do it with complete mindfulness. Let the stretching happen within consciousness, within awareness. So Jim, will you do a little movement? I'll go be with the kids.
So we get in touch with our feet on the floor and maybe create a rhythm of pouring, pour the energy into one leg and then swing back and pour it into the other leg. Like you're pouring water, which you kind of are. The other day, one of my students asked me, why are we doing this? Of course, my brain just went frozen. Why are you asking that question? Then I launched into some kind of little lecturette about fall prevention and differentiating the nervous system and stuff. And it really bothered me. My brain just froze when she asked me that question. Then I got home and paused. Oh, I should have said, we do this to celebrate our love. That's what we're doing. Loving being present with you all, loving, having awareness of all the sensations between this part of the rhythm and the other part of the rhythm. And when we do things like that in harmony, the whole nervous system steps down a peg. And that's connection. That's love. So sync and express it this way. Each finger making contact with billions of little atmospheric cells, connecting. All those little cells connecting inside the lungs. There's just connections happening all the time. Change, change, change. Open, make some more room for connection. Then we'll reach overhead, paint a rainbow, let the imagination play with colors. And then relax the arms, sink across the wrists, come up the center, and then separate the clouds. So we put a rhythm to this changing sensations, and it draws us all together into a form. Turning to the side, palms up, push and pull. And drawing the arms back, full circle for the shoulders. Pleasant feeling, I hope. Release of contracted, tight muscles. And then reach across, let the heel come off the floor. Watching the intelligence of the body balance on one leg, and then balance on the other. We just have to have the intention to follow the rhythm, and then the balance sort of appears. Turn, gaze at the moon. Pressing across. Then reach across for cloud hands. Just focus on the upper hand, drifting across the sky. Switch. But don't forget the shadow following underneath. So we focus our attention on the upper hand, but we don't lose our awareness of what's below, what's beyond. How does awareness do that? So we've reached the halfway point. That's the soothing part. Now we'll do a little more energizing. Step out and splash in the sea. Ride the waves. Open the arms. Palms up, palms down. And then back to the center. Feel the balance, feel the connection with the floor and the earth. And then when we set the rhythm in motion again, change of mood, agency. May not always be this way. Ride the waves. And open the arms. And back to the center. We make a fist, sink, let the dragon rise from the sea. Spread our wings, go up on the toes, fly with the cranes. Conscious of toes and ankles, instep, shoulders. It's hard to fly. A lot of things have to be brought together. Turn the wheel. And go the other way. Back to the center, feeling the balance, feeling the stillness. Lifting one hand and one knee, bouncing a ball. Again, we have the intention to bounce the ball, and then all this other stuff happens in balance. How does that happen? And then we just gather new energy in, release, and let the stress dissolve and run away. And coming to stillness. There's still lots of sensations, lots of flow, lots of subtle little rhythms. So it's been a while since I did a Saturday workshop, so I'm going to stay later today, and if you want to play around with more of these movements and exercises in awareness, I'll be here from 1:30 to 4:30, so join me if you can. Thank you.
Kirsten, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten. I'm the volunteer coordinator here. I also co-teach a nonviolent communication class here with Doyle. And I have a special announcement today. So my teacher who taught me nonviolent communication, his name's Kathy Marchant, who actually, Robert took her class years ago. She's absolutely wonderful. She's recently gotten a really severe diagnosis of myelodysplastic syndrome, which is a severe blood cancer. And it's unknown how she's going to do, but she's calling on her community to help support her because she has to stop working, and medical expenses are quite expensive. And so I asked her permission if I could have a benefit concert for her because I'm a musician. And she said, "Oh my gosh, that would be amazing, thank you." And I asked Robert's permission if I could share that with the community, and he said, "Absolutely." And just keeping in mind the way our teachers I wouldn't be teaching NVC without Kathy Marchant. And so many of you in this room have taken the class from me and Doyle. Can I just see who's been in the class? So a lot of folks here, and we continue to teach it, and it just is so transformative of our lives, and it really is the how of skillful speech on the Dharma wheel, and it impacts everything we do. So that concert, my band plays every fourth Friday at Ford Food and Drink. So this coming month, March 22nd, 7 to 9 at Ford Food and Drink on 11th and Division, we're having the show be dedicated to Kathy. So any income we receive from that show, it's a free show, so we only make a couple $100, but we're opening it up to the community, hoping people will come forth and make donations for her. I'm posting it all over social media. I'll post it on the Connections website. And if you're not able to come, but you'd like to contribute, feel free to come and see me, and you can write her a check, and I'll give you her information. But one of the core teachings of nonviolent communication aligned with the Dharma is when you make a request of someone, you're giving them a gift, which is you're giving them the opportunity to be generous. So, and in line with the Dharma, when we are generous, it just opens our hearts and heals us. So with that in mind, and all that Kathy's been teaching for 20 years, all the lives she's touched, come see me if you'd like to know more about that. I will be posting it, so you'll know more. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks. Well, today is February 24th. 2 days from now will be the 4th anniversary of Ruth Dennison's passing. How it can be 4 years already, I don't quite fathom, though it has taken till now to get that little, little tiny estate settled. Been bizarre. But Ruth Dennison, a picture of her in the last 6 months of her life. My dear Dharma mother and great benefactress, this center would not exist without Ruth's encouragement and also huge financial support. I'd been practicing for several years, maybe 9, when I met Ruth. I went to pay respects to an old monk who was visiting the Bay Area from Burma, the monk that I had gone to Burma and did a week of novice ordination with. This Donna Bowl came from him. Oh, announcements. I have to do announcements. Anyway, I was there and she was there. She came in, she had a bee sting, and I was rubbing her arm, and we traded names, and I had heard of her. And we then went and talked for 6 or 8 hours. The first conversation we ever had went on for a long time. She had one of those Volkswagen camper vans. We went and sat under the awning. And it was, I can certainly say in retrospect, it was an encounter that changed the rest of my life. Because I finally had someone to talk to, someone who took an interest in my practice. Right in the middle of your head. And took an interest in me. One of her phrases was, "Darling, I like to get under their skin." And she really paid attention and could see where students were stuck. I started then going to her retreats and then managing her retreats, and ultimately we became close friends. And then in the last year or so of her life, 2 years, I was responsible for her caregivers. And then I had the great privilege of being there at her death. Pause. The announcements. A word from our sponsor. You received on the way in, or you could pick up on your way out, a schedule of coming events. There are some wonderful ones. Christine and Paige Freeborn are next Saturday, a week from yesterday, doing a day for women. Do you want to say anything about it? Use the mic. For women, or those identifying as women.
Yeah, so for anybody who identifies as a woman, we're doing a 6-hour. It goes from 9 to 3 with a 45-minute silent lunch. And the silent lunches, people can bring packed lunches. It's not a women's themed retreat. In other words, it's not geared so much, we're not going to be talking about women's issues, but it's mainly just a chance to learn about the Dharma and sit together, and we'd love to have you.
Thanks. Thank you. Great. And then Saturday, March the 16th, 2 weeks from last night, Carol doing Force of Nature. And I'll have to check the website to be sure. You can look on the website, and then by later this afternoon you should be able to register online. We're having a little glitch. Buddhist movie night coming up Saturday, March the 23rd. Oh, here we go. This is an important one. Sunday, April the 7th. Please mark your calendars. This time, this Sunday morning time, will be we think of them as once per year, though it's more like once every 18 months in this case. We're going to have a community meeting. We'll sit for a while at the beginning, and then we'll be talking about what's coming in the community and asking for your support in that. And among the things we'll be talking about is that Gregory Malouf, how many of you have studied with Gregory? Oh, good, a lot. Gregory Malouf will be coming aboard. He'll be renting office number 7, which is down there, and starting a psychotherapy practice, and also taking over a part-time in relieving me of a lot of the administrative stuff that I do so that I can focus more on teaching. So there's that and some other things that are coming, which are really a big change for PIMC and a growth moment. At the very beginning, I was here alone for, golly, a long time, and I did everything, which was absurd, including the plumbing and the bank deposits and the teaching and PIMC was a shadow of what it is now. And then the idea emerged to have another employee, and Kate Staples came aboard and created the position, and suddenly there was a lot more happening. And so we're envisioning that with Gregory aboard, we'll have the opportunity again to be much, much more solid as a community and much more things offered. The Donna basket. This bowl is a transformer for your excess or not yet dedicated financial largesse to turn into Dharma. There is now, as of this morning, a new wooden Dana, what would you call it, a Dana bucket? No, a Dana box, which will be attached to the wall because we had a theft a few weeks ago, and it was quite a sad thing. We have video of the fellow coming in the T-shirt on a cold morning and grabbing the cash and running out the door. He dropped the $20 bill as he ran. He was so hurried and frightened, and so we wished him well and warmth, and we don't want to have a repeat of that. So there will now be 2 places you can make your in-the-room donations. There's a wood box, which is not tied to the wall yet, so don't make off with the box. And the bowl here. Though even better is to go online and to make a monthly contribution. And I've been listening to NPR this week. I listened to their ongoing requests, and they're sustaining memberships. Ours is the Stewardship Circle. And lo and behold, this all happens and is supported by your generosity. So thank you. Okay. What was I saying? Death. This is a little piece of Ruth Denison in here, and I encourage you to, if you wish, to come up and take a look. You can actually twist it. It comes apart, and you can see there's a piece of calcified calcium that's been through a cremation retort. That's Ruth, leftovers. She, in the year prior to her death, I went down there several times, and among the things she wanted to do was to visit the crematorium, because she wanted to know where she would be as a body going when she was cremated. So we went and visited, and it was very interesting. And then we went to the room where the big ceremony was held, and we were sitting there, and it was hard for me. And we were holding hands, and she was tiny at that point. I don't know, she shrunk it down. And I said, this is really a bad setup for me, because the next time I sit in this room, you'll be in a coffin up there, and I'll be bereft. And she said, oh, that'll be such a wonderful teaching on impermanence, won't it? Yeah. And it was, because then that moment came, and now it's 4 years later. So why do we practice? Why do you practice? I had a dream 2 days ago, about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I dreamed that I had died. And it was so exquisitely peaceful. And I came out of that dream and was lying there in thoughtlessness and such great ease. And I found myself thinking about it a lot. And that morning and beyond, that nagging anxiety that I live with, my personality, was pretty much absent. And the reality is that in this mind, and I bet it's true for yours as much, just as much as mine, is almost everything that it worries about is trivial, unimportant, and silly. Because the fact is, we're passing through, and we're passing through at remarkable speed. It's 4 years since Ruth died. In the spiritual news this last week, we've known for a while, among my peers, Stephen Armstrong was diagnosed with I think, terminal brain tumor a year ago. I learned the other day that Steve Smith, who's another teacher my age, my generation, is no longer teaching. I don't know any more about it than that, but that he's off the circuit. And Sharon Salzberg. They didn't say in the announcement what it was, but she was in the hospital and surrounded by good caregivers, and that she would be taking the next few months off in order to return to full health. So kind of a cryptic thing. And so none of us are here long. Oh, I should advertise my retreat. All right. That was the... All right. So, thank you, Danny. On Saturday, March the 9th, come and participate in Remembering Death, which is from 9 to 4. This is the 4th or 5th time I've done it, and it's really looking at the Buddhist practices on remembering death, and also some of a fantastic video called Consider the Conversation, which is conversations about end-of-life issues. And it's always been very powerful and very healing. So what's important, I guess? What's important? What in your life are you struggling over and fretting over that really isn't worth that much effort? Something that I notice in my own programming is that the mind, much of the time, creates some kind of an artificial deadline on something, or maybe it's a real deadline, and then it creates a kind of tension in the upper body and a shortness in the breath, and then there's a certain sense of urgency and meaning. I'm a meaningful person because I'm anxious about this or anxious about that. And then, exemplified yesterday morning, or day before yesterday, it was such a relief to not have that. And surprisingly, I was as efficient as without it, or maybe more, because it was creating a kind of flutter in the field that was not necessary. So that's one of the deep reasons that we cultivate a daily practice. And why we go on retreats, and why we do the therapy work we need to do, and why we do all these, we make these efforts to train and to tame the human mind, because left to its own devices, it's a pretty, it's a pretty nutty place. It creates a lot of anguish over things that aren't really worthy of that. And it makes us, I want to go back, just because I promised to several weeks ago, to skillful speech. And because this anxiousness about how the world is going to be and how can I control the world is one of the forces that leads us to speak not skillfully. Because when we're anxious, when we're frightened, we sometimes will try to influence the people around us to get our needs met in some not so skillful ways. So I particularly wanted to say a little something about lying. And we're living in a public atmosphere of lies on an order that we haven't seen for a long time. I've never seen anything like this. And it creates a kind of anxiety that when we can't tell, when someone's telling us something that's not true, and then it's revealed as not true, then the bond is broken. The sense of I can trust you, what you say matters, and what you say I can lean on. And so we can look at it out there of how the lying discourse is an exaggerating discourse, how it creates anxiety there, but then we can also take it inside and really examine how is it that how is it that I'm not quite honest with myself? And there are many ways. There are, as we mature, we can sometimes discover that there's stories we've been telling ourselves about who we are and how we are that haven't been true, but we haven't had enough awareness to notice them. And how we think creates our subjective reality. And so if I'm thinking, for instance, self-hating thoughts toward myself or anxiety-provoking thoughts toward myself, then I fall into the hypnotic trance of those very stories, and then I'm not very much at ease. I can't be at ease. So I'm thinking, popping in from the left here, the precepts around speech. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from speech which causes harm, from lying, from slander, from gossip, and from idle chatter. There's plenty of idle chatter, of course. So one of the things that we do in the meditation, I was hinting at this morning a bit, that we're not only learning to pay attention to the breath. People often think, well, when I master that, I'll have mastered meditation. But the breath is the training ground for concentration and this mystery of awareness. And with that, then, we can start observing much more clearly how, quote, we are thinking, how the thinking structures itself. And the thinking then kind of comes out of the background, and we can notice the stories that we're telling ourselves. The stories of, I'm right, they're wrong, or I'm right, she's wrong, or sometimes we have it flipped around, I'm always wrong. We can notice the stories we tell ourselves justifying our actions or criticizing ourselves for our actions. And we can certainly notice the idle chatter. It just goes on and on and on, doesn't it? Quite amazing. So the practice of tranquility, of developing some concentration, and the practice of observing our thinking then potentiates or prepares us for noticing how we're speaking. And to notice those times when we speak with exaggeration, or we speak with harshness or intensity which doesn't fit the situation. Or when we spread gossip or slander that is particularly around stuff we don't even know to be true. There's a couple of people in my life who are very agitated about political things, and they're agitated in a kind of angry way. And it's very interesting having conversations with them, because I'm finding myself less agitated in an angry way about the issues. But to be there and to stay as loving as I can, and to be really conscious about how I'm speaking in the context of those particularly political conversations, it's really a marvelous practice. How to stay centered in the face of someone who's really trying to hypnotize you into a particular way of seeing, or who's trying to create some opposition in you so they can have the fight they'd really like to have. So speech, skillful speech. Should have you come up and give this. The Buddha gave some very clear, fine advice about when to speak. When I'm about to speak, is what I'm about to say true? Is the purpose of this speech to connect? Is it healing? Can I say it kindly? And is it the right time? There was a circumstance in my life some years ago now, blessedly, but there was something I needed to say to a partner that was true. But when I tried to say it, it always led to an uproar. And I waited, I think it was 2.5 years, knowing that it needed to be said again. And then the right moment came up, and I said it, and she said, "You know, I've been thinking about that." But so many times it had been on the tip of my tongue. But I'd really learned that it has to be the right time. So I want to bring, there's this reflection on impermanence and death that I talked about, and then this issue of speech. And I want to pull them together here if I can. Perhaps it's my age. But it's clear to me, we don't have a lot of time together. You know, a few encounters, a few weeks, a few years, and I'm having this perceptual experience, which has to do with a deeper realization of impermanence. It's very clear that events keep happening and ending, like the breath happens and ends, happens and ends, happens. In an eye blink or two, we will be somewhere else, and it'll be this afternoon, and then it'll be tomorrow, and then it'll be. But we don't get to be in contact with each other really very long. And so, how do we maximize our capacity to be loving with each other? And speech is a really big piece of that, the whole thing with the precepts of not harming each other. So to go through life without sharpening the skills of awareness of the present moment and being able to be here means we go through it in a kind of a dream. And not only a dream, but we go through it acting robotically on our conditionings from the past. There's something else that wants to come out. It's not here. Let me ask you this. What do you know about this? This preciousness of every interaction and the way we can influence our interactions in a loving, kind, compassionate direction, or the way we can influence them in the opposite. So I'm going to ask you that, or if you have a question around this. And how does your practice influence your capacity to be here? Please. And please say your name, okay? Oh, there you go.
Hi, I'm Andy, and I'm a little bit excited, I guess. Every time I'm here, I get into this calm state of mind, and I have this Fitbit, so it tells me that my heart rate usually when I listen to you speak, it's at like 50, and now it's at like 70. So, whew, all right. So. I started meditating about 2 months ago, but really I got into it about a month ago, more than just paying attention to my breath. I started paying attention to how my body feels and fighting this little ball of energy inside myself that calls me down and that tells me, you know, what my destiny is and how I'm supposed to be. And to talk about how relating to people changed, I feel like I'm connected with everybody. I feel like, I mean, a lot more people are into my life right now, and a lot of other people. I feel they see themselves in me, and I see myself in them. I guess I'm kind of nervous about this because honestly, I don't know that much about this. Like I'm speaking right now from like a month of experience, and it's pretty amazing what it's done to me. But I'm kind of nervous because that's all I can say for now. I was having a question, and I think I can remember it. I think a lot about. I'm an extrovert, and people charge me up. But what I was thinking about is. I guess I'm kind of answering myself now. So this energy that I'm feeling from people, you know, sometimes when they're going through harm, when they're going through suffering, you know, I feel this inside my body. I feel it especially in my lower back, sometimes my upper back. Well, what are some ways I can deal with that better? What are some ways I can, you know, because I don't want to keep that inside of me, you know, all their suffering and all their hurting. And I do like stretches and I do stuff like that, but I still feel like at the end of the day, there's still something there, and I still, you know, I go into my dreams thinking about it.
So are you saying that in interactions with other people, their emotional state is affecting you, and then we have leftovers from that?
Yeah.
Okay, I can say something to that. Thanks. There is something about psychic, energetic transfer. Years ago I did biofeedback, and I forget the name of it. There was a couple in Kansas, I think, that were doing really leading edge research on it, and they had healers come into a room. They had the person needing healing and the healer came in, and they had copper walls that were about 10 feet from the chair. And one of the things they discovered was that even with the electronics of that age, the heartbeats of the people in the room were discernible. They could pick them up on the copper 10 feet away. So we are bioelectronically affecting each other stunningly right now. In this room, it's this big soup of measurable with electronic electronic devices, not on, and then beyond that, of course, is the stuff we don't know how to measure. So, I thought of an experience I had very early in my psychotherapy career. I was running a group home with the Janus program, and there was a boy there that had a particular difficulty, it was called encopretic. He wouldn't control his bowel functions, and he shouldn't have been in the house, but he was there. And a circumstance happened where the father, the male employee of the house, was so enraged at this kid that he had him. I walked in the house and he had him up against the wall and with his fist cocked, and we calmed that down. But then I got the boy upstairs into the little office that I had, and he was sullen and wouldn't talk to me. And he had a choice. He could talk to me, or I could call the police, and he would go back to Damish, the psych hospital we used to be here, or in Salem. And he wouldn't talk to me. And I was so committed to him talking to me that I got up and I went over and I took him by the shoulders and I said, "Talk to me." And in a second, I felt nauseated and I had a fever. And it was all I could do to go downstairs and tell the house parents I have to go. And I got home and I went to bed. I was in bed for 2 or 3 days. Something happened. And he was fine. In the next second, he was fine. So I really believe we do need to have a little caution. And so that's a very dramatic example. But what was happening in that was I was desperate for him to be okay. And that actually isn't my role. For me to be compassionate and caring for him, but it's his responsibility to take care of himself. And I had capital C codependency at that point, and my value as a human being was determined whether I could save him or others or not, and that's evolved a lot. So that's one of the threads, which is to realize that people around us are having their experiences and they're theirs. In the Buddhist training, it's understood that there are 4 very healthy affects. The first is love. And in love, there's room for everything. So you're with someone, and there's room for whatever they're experiencing. There's room in yourself, in your meditation. This is what I'm experiencing, and there's room for it. The second is compassion. The Buddha described as the sensitive heart's natural trembling when faced with suffering. And that is, oh, you're hurting, or I'm hurting. How can I help? Beautiful capacity. The third is sympathetic joy or delight, in which someone's being successful and happy and they've just won a guitar, and you get a contact high off. It's like, wow, you're having such success and happiness, may this persist. But then the fourth one, then the fourth one is of quite a different order. And that's the practice of equanimity. And in equanimity, there's the realization, not by my actions or wishing do people have their life experience, it's by their own. And so in equanimity, we can be present with really great suffering, but we don't take it on. Oh, I gotta turn this off. We don't take it on because we realize this suffering that they're having is the way of the world. Right? It's normal. So without this last these are the Brahma Viharas, the abode of the gods, without this last very skillful capacity, as we meditate and we become more sensitive, we're going to fry. We're going to fry terribly because the first time I ran into interpersonal communication training, it was 1971. And I had this teacher in a graduate program in environmental studies. His name was Bob Mark. And he said the outlandish thing, before long, you'll be able to walk down the street and you'll know what people are feeling. And I thought, whoa, psychic powers, But and you probably know this yourselves, you most likely do. You know when you get up to the clerk at Fred Meyer or somewhere and he or she is really depressed? You can feel it. Or when someone you live with comes home and they walk in the door and you can tell by the way they close the door that something's happening. And then you can maybe attune to it in yourself. And so part of the skill, the meditative skill, is learning how, it's not to be hard-hearted, it's not to not feel it, but it's this understanding that, this is not mine. At one teacher's conference years and years ago, there was a fellow there who was a pediatric oncologist, who was also a Dharma teacher. And he said that he had to meditate 2 hours a day to do his work. He said, I cause so much pain to those little children and babies that if I don't sit a lot, it just fries me. So perhaps some of that will be helpful. Okay. Anything else? I'm in the background. There's something I wanted to say that's not coming, so we'll see. Maybe you can provoke it. Please.
Hello.
First you and then over to Joseph. Okay. Good.
I just had a maybe quick question, but you had mentioned idle chatter. What exactly does that mean?
Almost everything we say. Almost everything on the media. It's speech that has no real meaning, which isn't helpful, which is sitting on this stage, this place here, Achan Tanisaro said something like I just said, and then he said, it also is social grease. And so part of what we do is we talk about things, and the content isn't what's happening. It's the nonverbals that are saying, I like you, you're safe. I like you, you're safe. And we get that back. And so we pass that back and forth. And something like 85% of the content of ordinary communication, it's the PHATIC, the phatic communication. It's the nonverbals that are telling us whether we're safe or not. And then there's that little bit that's about the meaning. So One of the things that we do on a meditation retreat is to have no talk at all. And then we discover what happens with that, and we discover that we can be very connected without speech. So it's speech which really has no purpose other than that. And you've no doubt met people who never stop talking, who face you with the wall or the tsunami of talk always, and they never ask you about you, and that's an incredibly powerful defense. It's impenetrable. And that's almost always just idle. Let's talk. Let me now tell you about the weather yesterday, and when we find ourselves doing that, we can pause and say, "So what's happening here? What's happening here that I'm not only that the mind is out of control talking, but that it actually gets control of the mouth, and then it's so is that helpful? Please."
My name's Joseph, and I was really inspired by Andy being up here and speaking to us with a month of practice. Because I've been doing it a bit longer than a month, but every day it feels like a brand new thing. And what I've been working with lately is curiosity. Because what I've learned through my practice recently and in Kirsten Doyle's nonviolent communication class is the importance of really connecting with somebody through understanding and being curious about what's going inside of me. You know, it's so easy to be in reaction. Somebody says something or does something that bothers me, and I can instantly react without really knowing where that's coming from, what need or what fear or what hope is driving the reaction. So really being inwardly deeply curious every day and month and year about why am I feeling this right now? Where is that coming from? Right? And even though I can say that now in clarity, I will forget it at the supermarket when somebody cuts in front of me and I'm like, whoa. It's so, that's my lesson, that's my work that I'm doing is around curiosity. So that's not a question, Robert, but maybe
Thank you.
If it triggers something and you...
Go for it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Steel. Cool thing about what Jim said today and did is the water, the wave, and I'm a doctor. I study physiology, neurology, and the human body is actually an experiment. It's a laboratory, a for the most part, most people are self-maintaining experiment. They put in the ingredients to keep this thing going. And there's a feedback loop. So it's a flexible container with some particles in it, mostly fluid. I call it a beaker, so we're all beakering around. So when it comes to speech is a constant experiment. It's all those reflexes, the feedback loops, and what speech is just the reflex of all the neural pathways that have practiced and responded and explored and curious about making this sound that is the most essential sound for a human spirit to be grounded. It vibrates the entire body. The brain, the vocal cords, the auditory, all the auras. And it's essential. I feel sad and just blown away for people who have no vocal ability. Or no visual ability or acoustic. So when it comes to speech, I also have the similar values about must be absolutely essential or necessary. in the estimation of the scientist. True and empowering. Those are the three: loving, empowering, all. Something that feels like it enhances the dance. So, there's the sound is a natural reflex of grounding, and also adding and contributing, and it's interesting challenge to have this intention of controlling it. And it is controlled to the degree that all of the skill and awareness of the sounds and the phonetics and all that feedback loop to make those sounds to enhance the dance. Thanks.
Thanks, Teal. Dan?
Hi, I'm Danny. I've been in Robert's class on Ajahn Sumedho, and something about the noise and the quality that he brought up, this thing that we have this, some of us have a sense that the government or the political system will save us or help us, and that we're relying on that, or we're thinking that that's the problem in our life. That's the problem in our life is the system. And yet, he says beyond that, you have to be aware and in your life and not depend on what the government is. The government's a passing blip in time. As you said, a passing thing, not to underestimate what's going on right now, but it is a passing blip. And that we still have to stay in awareness of what we need to do in our lives beyond this agitation and this noise that's going on, and be aware that we can't rely on this noise or this story we're creating about the madness, the lies, all these things. That beyond that, there's a personal responsibility, maybe now more than ever, to be compassionate and kind within this framework. But it is just a framework and a passing of time.
Hi, Robert, KB. I was just thinking about what Andy said, which really was just so beautifully clear and open and free, and such a lovely new vision of, I think, what we all hope to experience when we meditate. And I used to think that maybe it was being here that was that was my safety zone, and when I walked outside, the world I would close back down. But I'm realizing more that it's about connection with one or two people or three people. I can let my guard down. I can interact. But when I open up out there, the wall of hate and fear, I feel like a pebble in an ocean, and I can't protect myself from the wave of horror at things that are being experienced by thousands and thousands of people. I don't know how to protect myself, so it's a riff off of Andy's question about equanimity when you're faced with overwhelming energy if you open up.
To my dream. It's such a relief to even consider, let alone realize, that this is a dream. there were 14.2 billion years of universe, galaxies exploding, supernovas. I learned this morning, driving over, that everything, I always used to say that when I have a gold ring, and this gold ring was formed in the explosion of a supernova. The destruction of a solar system was required. Everything heavier than iron in the periodic table was created in supernovas. I mean, the destruction is... But this is a very convincing dream, isn't it? There's them and there's us and there's me and there's you and there's evil and there's good and there's all the polarities. And what an extraordinary relief it is to have even an inkling that everything here that we take so seriously is a dream. Because this is so convincing. This is the thing I was realizing earlier, I was struggling to try to find, that it takes a lot. I mean, this is so convincingly me. And I know for you, that's so convincingly you, and protecting it and developing it and so on is of such, it cries out so loudly, so... It's the song of the self, I, me, mine, mine. And yet, for those of you that have been around the Dharma for a while, the central teaching of the Buddha, anicca, impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, there is no satisfaction as a human being. There is no lasting satisfaction. We're a flow-through phenomenon. There's satisfaction for a moment, and then there's always dukkha. There's always something wrong. And boy, this mind has fought against that. Is that true? Well, what about if I could have that fine... I had the great vacation, and it ended. And even there were, there was conflict. I've had the kids, there's always dukkha. Dalink, as Ruth put it, there's always a leak in the canoe. And the human suffering of today is probably no greater or less than it's always been. Famines have been happening, earthquakes have been happening, despots have happened, revolutions happen, the good guys get positive for a while and then they get struck down, and then there's an assassination, and then the baby dies, or it's totally unstable. And that's where the refuge is given. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And if this is more personal for you, if opening, quote, out there, as though out there were different from here, is overwhelming, then maybe practice more. Less opening, more. I'm thinking, keep having this memory Jack Cornfield told when he was practicing in Thailand. It was during the American bombing of Southeast Asia. Ubon Lachatani was, when Ajahn Chah chose there for his monastery, it was like going to the Ozarks. I mean, it was like nobody went to East Thailand. And the village, that Ubon village, became a city of 2.5 million people during the Vietnam War in order to support the two air bases that were in eastern Thailand. That was one of them. So anyway, Jack had friends who were Quakers, who were on their way to Hanoi, and they stopped off where he was, and they said, "What are you doing sitting here on your butt? I mean, do something." And he got a little connected with it, and he went to Ajahn Chah, who said, "Well, there have to be islands of sanity, and this is one of those. So to make of ourselves an island of sanity and have enough time for self-healing, and then to enter those realms, and also to purify our perception. How do I say this? The wall of agitation and suffering that's out there happens in our imagination. When there's a person in front of me and they're suffering, then that's that. But the other is something that I conjure up because, there's all these people that are suffering. Well, where are they? My direct experience isn't that. Now we can turn on the tube and we can quickly fill in with a few, but to drop into the presence of the moment, here I am, and what's happening here is this. So is that helpful? To be right. Upon his death, the Buddha said, "Make of yourself a light, take no other refuge." Take the Dharma as your refuge. This is what's happening here. Okay? I have subtle... there's a subtle sense of unrest. Though I do have one more announcement before we get there. We are seeking a new teacher for our children's program. If you might be interested in that, please talk to me or talk to Avi. Did you want to say something? No? You're just sitting up straight? Okay. And I think that was it. So thank you so much for being here. And by gathering together like this, we support ourselves in our practice. And then we can, in fact, endure incredible challenges that come in our lives. Right? Because everything's so changeable. Thanks. Thanks for inviting me to be in this seat, too. It's very important for me. Thanks again. Let's make a circle. Thank you to those of you who've joined us on the internet. I will need the microphone. Oh, it's there. It's being... Thank you, sir. Come sit in the middle. Join the kids. Oh, there's a meeting today at 12:15 of parents or anyone else interested in the children's program. That we're creating more of a structure as we go forward, and you could be part of that if you'd like. Hey, may I hold your hand?
My understanding is everyone is welcome.
Everyone who is a child or was a child. Come on in, Andy. Here, you can sit here. There we go. So to all those in adult bodies here, were you a child once? Are you a child still? Yes. Okay. So, please become aware of standing or sitting, and of the hand in your right hand. Give that hand a little squeeze. It's a hand of a person who's flying through a human birth, alive in this moment. Why not wish her or him well? What would be your grandest, deepest, most loving wish? And the person on your left, give their hand a squeeze. And around our circle, hand to hand, heart to heart, and including the person who sits between these hands. May all beings everywhere share in the merits of our practice. Please let us call to the altar of our hearts our teachers and mentors, all these people on whose shoulders we stand. And I invoke the loving presence of Ruth Dennison. And now, the ancient ritual. Since the time of the Buddha, children have been doing this. Ta-ta-ta.
Okay, you hold on, and you hold on. There we go. May
all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very nice. Thank you very much. All right. Please do join us afterwards through that door down into the living room. There's some tea and coffee and goodies to be social with. Are we ready to blow out the candle? Anybody else want to be involved? Oh, there, you're getting close. Good. Now I have to do the count. 1, 2, not yet. I'm going to do this. 1, 2, 3, blow. Are you ready? Not yet. Not yet. Already. 1, 2, 3, blow. Yay! We did it. Hooray. Thank you, dear friends. Thank you all for being here, and see you soon.